Family emergency.
family emergency.
Good.
More projects.
All right. You're live. All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's 5:31 on Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. And I now call to order the City of College Place City Council Workshop. Everyone, please take roll call.
Mayor Hernandez,
Present.
Councilmember Jessup,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle. Present. And Councilmember Williams said she will be arriving late, and Councilmembers Espinoza and Sherman asked to be excused. We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Will you all please join me for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's now time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment, or is anyone in attendance, either in person or virtual, that would like to speak?
I did not receive any comments, and we have one attendee.
Okay, if anyone virtually would like to speak, please raise your hand. *9 will allow you to raise your hand if you're on the phone. No one, all right. So we have 3 workshop topics tonight. No action will be taken. And the first one is Mr. Carlton will present the resolution of support for Washington Secretary of State organize the file grant.
Yes, there are grants offered by the Secretary of State in a number of different areas. The one we're interested in is to get a grant to help us organize our paper files. For those of you who don't know, we have a large room in the basement that is full of paper records. And we're required to keep those records over a certain number of years, depending on the type of document it is. And I think we've done a relatively good job over the past years trying to track what's in those boxes. But then there's some that have just been dumped in there without, identifying when they can be destroyed and so on. So there's an opportunity with the Secretary of State to apply for a grant that will offer us $20,000 in funding to assist in dealing with those paper records. I know I've got about 12 boxes of paper in my office that I don't have time to deal with. It would definitely give us an opportunity to hire somebody and on a temporary basis and help us sort through those documents. And the idea is between Sherry and Ree that they would train this person on what the record destruction rules are.
And how to identify the records.
Right, so next council meeting, we'll bring this to council for approval to go after that grant. There's a couple other areas you can go at. You can go at ones that do electronic documents. So if we get through the paper this year, we might go after the grant next year to go after electronic documents. Because I know that's a real, that's a challenge. Any questions?
Let's see, does anyone have any questions regarding this potential future resolution for support? Councilmember Cleveland?
I kind of a question more generally about our record keeping. I thought I remembered something a couple of years ago where we were transferring to like all electronic records. Am I misremembering that? Or is that kind of like from a certain point onward that we started doing that? Or is that like just totally misremembering?
Well, we do have a lot of electronic records.
I'm guessing maybe it was kind of on an ad hoc basis within certain departments. John, maybe you can speak a little bit.
So the building and community development department, all of our permits, we only accept electronically. they have to be emailed through a plan bill at cpwa.us email currently, and then with the new software that we're going to, there'll be a portal that you'll upload to. We do assist people that have technology difficulties, where we can scan paper copies, but that's pretty limited at this point. We don't, it's really drink with that, we have to do that.
Where are we currently generating all this paperwork? What kind of things are we keeping, and what opportunities do we have for potentially transitioning to, you know, more scanning, or just avoiding the paper in general and just doing electronic?
And we're sort of moving in that direction, but it's not all at once completion. I know general ledger, journal entries, we have to have paper backup documents. A lot of that is paper. And in a lot of aspects, it's also scanned in. So we seem to have a combination of, but when the auditors come in, we provide them with paper documents for the audit. A lot of the documents that come in on contracts, so our big projects, you know, have pages and pages of documents. A lot of that is scanned in, but we also have paper documents, you know, sometimes at some level. So it's a mixed bag of some stuff's electronic and some still paper. We still receive a lot of paper documents for accounts payable, invoicing, and so on is paper. There is some that is sent electronically, but it's not a, you know, cut and dry where, yes, we're going electronic, no more paper. I don't think we're there yet.
Well, and it's very complicated, and Sherry can speak to this of what we can destroy. Some of it is the scan and destroy policy, but you also have to scan it in a certain file type that is not always the most. It's a great file type for archival purposes, but for day-to-day use and like actual legibility, they can be very grainy documents, and not necessarily the style we want to keep them in, or if we want to go back and use them. But for instance, going forward, I only produce electronic documents. I don't, I only email out my decisions, all, you know, plats and subdivisions, everything's communicated electronically. So those files are, you know, kept in an electronic file system. But from the planning, my planning documents, I have to archive those in forever. Even if we do scan them, I still have to keep those original paper documents that were created 20, 30 years ago. It's just, it all goes back to the state and how they can, based on what the file type is, what it is, the document is that you're saving, and how long you have to keep it for.
So if you Google retention schedule, Washington State, you'll come up with that. Every type of department,
So-
every type of agency.
So an image is not as good as the original?
And yeah,
Huh,
And some of them aren't searchable, you know, like you can't search a keyword.
well, can I speak?
There you go. It's like
You
you're
know,
asking me.
I'm not gonna back away from money, you know, this is the potential to do, to buy metal storage containers for paper.
Well, I don't know if we need that specifically,
It's this does provide for
a certain amount.
certain boxes, it's
Oh.
specifically for banker boxes and
No, that,
storage and all that.
and that's great. I think we need to move though to your point, to some sort of software, and it isn't that expensive, maybe in the future. To scan this with the OCR. And that's where you can search on keywords, with
Yeah.
it scanned. Many times you can have students, you can have interns, whatever, scan these documents.
Yep.
So what you're talking about is a scanner software, you know, in a corner of a room somewhere. But you can put, you know, the original electronic is always great, that's fine. We're never gonna get away from paper. We always, you know, 100 years ago, we're gonna get away from paper, not gonna happen ever, you know. But we can move to a thing where we have the OCR keyword, you know, college place, you know, whatever. And I think that's where we need to move in the future after we get to here.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because you can't keep building bigger rooms, you know. Yeah.
Agreed. And all my files as far as criminal cases are not paper files.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, with the new Tyler system, all our AP documents are gonna be allowed to be electronic.
no,
And
it's,
so we won't have to keep any paper copies of invoices. They'll all be scanned in and kept in the system. So it's, we're making inroads.
no, it's tough because they send paper to you, let's go paperless. Well, okay, don't open the mail, yeah, you can't do that. But once you have it, you can scan it and then. The other issue I would ask of you, Ree, is. So physical documents have a lifespan of being recalled. So let's say it's 7 years. When it's put in electronic form, it's there forever. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, hopefully, eventually we'll get to the point where we can get rid of those electronic files on a regular retention schedule. And the
Yeah.
reason we want to do that is because when people make requests for records, to look at records, if we're keeping ones we don't need to keep, we have to search those.
Yeah,
So we have to search those on the computer and downstairs in the basement, and so the best practice would be to cull those. The police department does it every year, so that they don't have any documents that they don't need to have. And it would be best practice.
Yeah.
Just getting to that point. But we are with our we're gonna talk about the new IT. What we're gonna hopefully do in the next year, once we get that service up and going, is to reorganize our electronic files. Because it's kind of ad hoc and who has access to what drive, and it's just kind of a mess, so that will help, yeah.
And to Brian's point, there are certain documents that when like the auditors come and things like that, like the journal entries, I don't know about if this is how you guys have to have them. When we get audited every year, we have to have our journal entries that have like the approval chain, that have to have their initials and things like that, that show that those journal entries were reviewed and approved. And they don't want a scanned copy. They like ink on the paper. So there are certain pieces that, because their world is still at that level, there are certain things that we have electronic and then we have to print them for audit.
Well, for state auditors, they would take electronic copies if we had it available. Some of those, like journal entries, we don't scan those in.
Oh,
It takes time to scan them in.
Yep.
So we print the copy of the journal entry. It has the proper approvals on it and review and approval. And that's kept with the backup and file.
Yep.
So that's currently how we do it. Now to go to fully electronic method, you need some sort of workflow in the system that goes through an approval process, but you still lack that maybe work paper that explains why you did something. So we're kind of at
yeah,
we can do it kind of, but we seem to be missing certain components to get us to that complete paperless. Just come into my office and I'll show you.
No, I think we're looking for perfection and we'll never get there, but to the point here, we're not gonna back away from funds to help us in our.
Right, we still have.
People's money.
Yeah,
So, Brian, are we expecting, so it's for 20,000, let's say we get the whole 20. Are we gonna just do what the 20,000 allows, or do we expect this to be a higher cost project and we're gonna cover the rest?
I would assume we'll just do the 20,000 and see what it gets us.
That was my understanding, Sherry, yeah.
Okay.
Which, if you get a summer intern or somebody that could, all summer.
Yeah.
If at the very least, John and I talked about this, is identifying duplicates, just identifying duplicates and getting rid of that.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm all for improving our document organization and moving towards more efficient methods.
Absolutely. All right, then let's move on to the next agenda item or the workshop topic. Anti-camping regulations, homeless and new housing laws. Ms. Colwell, you're up.
Yes, before I forget, and I'll announce this at the next meeting too. It is extremely important that we have a quorum the last, meeting date in May. Because we have a deadline of June 1. So, yeah, it's a reminder.
For this particular topic?
No, not
Oh,
for this,
okay.
for the, TIF, the tax increment financing. We have to have it done before June 1. Our plan is to present that the last day in May.
Okay.
Okay, so in regards to homelessness and housing, in January, I brought this topic to you guys to discuss anti-camping ordinances and what we can do to protect our community from damage and the health risks associated with people who camp for, that's their residence. And it was brought up that we should bring this back to a workshop to just kind of hear ideas of what council wants, directions we want to go. How we want to handle homelessness in the city. The outcome of that meeting was we provided financial support to the sleep center. So we do have a place where homeless people can go for emergency shelter. And then the idea is if they choose not to go, they're choosing to commit the crime of trespass. And so then we can enforce that on city property. I did just learn this, that if the sleep center is full, the sleep center notifies Walla Walla Police Department so that they will not enforce trespassing laws or anti-camping laws when there's no space available. And I'll make a note of that because I want to make sure that that comes to our police department as so if it's full, that they're not going to arrest someone and throw them in jail for doing that. And then also timing here is we have new laws that were passed. And I'm sure you all read them and understand them completely. But with the new laws, basically, I'm gonna let John speak to it, but it's encouraging higher density, development of higher density housing and development of lower cost housing to combat our affordable housing crisis, really, in Washington State. So I can go through those, or John, do you want to summarize the new laws and how they will affect us?
That's funny.
Then the lawyer to the engineer.
Well, I didn't consume it all and put it out, in detail because it's just, yeah.
So going back to the last topic of paper,
Yeah.
this is the housing law, the low income housing, missing middle income.
Middle housing.
Middle housing. And we're actually getting a pass on that because we don't meet the threshold for population, nor does the city of Walla Walla or the county as a whole. So had that been the case, had they not put that population thresholds in there, we would be looking at being required to allow up to 4 dwelling units per lot. So that could be a townhome, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, two duplexes or Walla Walla. So to step back, Walla Walla is already allowing up to 4 dwelling units per lot. So there's some development going on around town in Walla Walla where there are 2 duplexes being put on lots. We're not facing that. So we don't really need to go into that code very deeply. I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. But however, there is the accessory dwelling unit law that's been signed or is expected to be signed by the governor. And that right now, presently, we allow up to 1 dwelling unit per lot in addition to your single family home, so 2 units per lot. The accessory dwelling unit law that's going to go into effect will allow two ADUs per lot, regardless of the lot size. And so That's gonna be a change for us, so that basically is. Put us up to 3 dwelling units per lot. If they could be, as an attached accessory dwelling unit, that could be detached, so you could have. An attached accessory dwelling unit and 2 detached in the backyard, or 2 attached in the backyard. I'm sorry. That would be 4, so one, yeah, total of 3. There's a number of ways to get to that number. You can't restrict setbacks off of alleys, so if we have a number of alleys in town. That would allow an accessory dwelling unit to build right on the alley right of way line. Conversion of existing structures that do not meet setbacks, for instance, like it was very popular in the 20s and 30s to build garages right on the property lines. And we have a number of those in town. Those could be converted to living spaces. Previously, we had restricted those from being converted because they didn't meet fire separation requirements. So that's wide open now. The assessments for like water and sewer, they can't exceed 50% of what the rate is that you're charging for a single family home. We already kind of have a structure set in place to encourage smaller accessory dwelling units. If they're 600 square feet or less in size, we only charge $500 per utility per connection. So we'll need to make an adjustment there to allow, if there are larger units, it will only be half of what we would charge for a single family. Some tweaks. I think we'll see people take advantage of it. The accessory dwelling units have picked up over the last couple of years. I think that people are going to be inclined to add that 3rd unit. They already have 2 in some areas. So, any questions on that? Or have you guys had a chance to look through what we've attached? Or have you read anything about it? Or
Councilmember Peterson?
You know, John, I think we've had discussions in the past, pretty recent actually, that has College Place and the development embraced multi-units on these lots? And, you know, I'm not sure we really didn't know, did we? I mean, there have been some of that activity. You know, the mini homes, and I keep using the same phrases over and over again, but your thoughts though on how this might affect that? I thought we would see more of the, you know, how do I characterize it? The grandparent home or whatever in the backyard or something like that. We haven't really seen that. Do you agree? Or where are we at on that as far as the expansion?
not in great numbers, but whereas we didn't allow it before, the code change, we were seeing, I think, I wish I would have pulled the reports. I want to say it's in the, like last year, I think we did 5 accessory dwelling units. So it's not a lot. But historically, I mean, we're constantly finding units that we did not know about that existed, 40 years ago. It started and you can tell, you go into these things and you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely, was put in when the house was built.
So how would this impact, do you think this is gonna accelerate the 5? I mean, this new decision,
I think
we don't know the future, right? But
I think we'll see there will be some, I think some developers will take advantage of it. Some people that, are in, that this is their, livelihood. They do small apartments and stuff. I think we'll see some expansion in that area, which is great. I mean, that will help with the affordable housing issue. Will it be dramatic? I don't think so. Are we going to see a lot of this happen up in some of our, more recent neighborhoods, in the villages of Garrison Creek? Are they gonna happen in there? Probably not. They're gonna have regulations in place that are probably gonna restrict that at the HOA level. But in our older core, I think we'll see it slowly. It's gonna happen.
thanks.
Councilmember Cleveland?
So one of the things I was hoping to discuss at the workshop is presently my understanding is that we do not allow people to stay in a trailer or RV on their own property. And I feel like, you know, if you can store your RV on your property, you could go in there and if you wanted to, you could use the sink or the bathroom or cook in there or take a nap, but you can't like live there. I feel like it'd be good to provide a legal opportunity for people to use their RVs and their land how they want, and or if they have other family members there. And in some cases, I've had family members or extended family members or friends when they've been at a certain point in their life where they're in a tough spot and they need some support. And a relative has allowed them to use a trailer or bring their own trailer or RV and stay in there on a temporary basis. So I feel like providing an opportunity to do that, you know, let people use their land how they want their stuff, provided it's within limits, would be a good idea. And ease some of that, at least a little bit of tension with some stuff. And what I might envision would be something like having people do a monthly permit. If you're gonna have someone live in a trailer, all right, let's have a monthly inspection. There has to be a plan for like, what are you gonna do for sanitation? All right, you can go inside and use the facilities there. You know, it could say a lot. It's an empty lot. There is no stuff there, then you need a plan for you know, bathroom and trash at the very least. So I don't know exactly what would all be on this kind of application, but
I can't more strongly disagree with what you're saying. So we're gonna monitor their bathroom breaks when they go out of their school bus from the yard into the
I was
house.
just thinking that there needs to be a plan. If there's no, if people are staying in a trailer and they're just going in a hole in the ground, now that could potentially cause some problems, right?
You wanna monitor the going in the hole in the ground?
No, just have a plan.
I
Oh,
disagree.
this might sway one or the other. I know for sure we don't have the capacity to monitor that or inspect that. I mean, our building inspectors are nonstop, 7 to 4. And we would, to do that, if it was a significant number, we would have to have some more capacity. John, do you
So
agree with that? And the big issue, I think, is stormwater, sewer.
there most certainly is a capacity at the staff level to administer any sort of additional programs. I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm just saying that there are limitations. And I don't have an opinion on this one way or the other. I'm just, in terms of what we have on our codes, it has been a discussion at Planning Commission. When we did our code update in terms of like the tiny homes. Whether or not those should be treated as like an accessory dwelling unit, they specifically excluded those from our accessory dwelling unit regulations. And their basis for that was, it is to generalize it, it's too difficult for an agency to regulate how those things are manufactured. Because there's, you know, you've all seen the shows where some really talented builder creates this awesome, you know, really cool hip trailer. And it's probably really safe, but then you also have, you know, the guy that saw that video and he goes out and he tries to recreate that whole thing and it has a whole lot of issues with it from, I mean, fire life safety stuff where there's not egress and so on and so forth. And so it's a rabbit hole that you can go down with, and at the state level, they are regulating these trailers. And so you can get an approved permit through Labor and Industries, which is the agency that regulates the licensing process of all trailers, whether it's a park model or something that you can tow down the highway, you know, that Airstream built. They all have to submit their plans to the state and get their approvals. So trying not to ramble too much here. It's very complicated, and so the planning commission chose to recommend drawing the line at keeping with tradition, what our prior zoning code had was to not allow people to stay in recreational vehicles on your property more than 14 days, and there was you could do that up to 4 different times in a calendar period. There was a slight tweak to that. I think we omitted being able to do that up to 4 times as, I think that was an oversight. I don't think we intended to eliminate that. So that you can't have family come to stay with you multiple times a year. You may have that cousin or nephew or whatever, that relative that needs a little bit of support, and maybe that you're gonna let them sleep in your camper in the backyard for a month or something. That has gone on in the city, and it's kind of been one of those things where people have been allowed to live in their trailer. And if it hasn't become an issue with the neighborhood, I mean, I hate to say this in the public realms, but you turn the blind eye, you look the other direction. Nobody's complaining about it. They're in a hard spot, but as soon as somebody, files that complaint, it has to be addressed. What was the term you used the other day, Reed, in terms of how we deal with things like that? It's like, sometimes you're putting out fires when.
It was something clever.
Yeah, it was very clever, yeah.
It was.
I can't imagine the legal, maybe nightmares part, harsh word, but to try to enforce. Because we always assume when we make these rules that people will follow them, right? And there's always those that they're not, they're gonna do it, and then I'm doing it, and that's that, and let me do it, and now I'm breaking the rules at this point. The nightmare of trying to get them to clean that, I almost see it as like when you're trying to evict somebody out of an apartment, you have to go through all the court system. And then even at that point, if it's gonna put somebody on the street, right, they almost give them chance after chance after chance before you're evicting them, because they don't want them living on the streets.
And I think we talked about like maybe BMAC administering it or something. I mean, something that, okay, we're gonna allow this, but we'll only allow it if another agency says it's okay and it complies with everything, and they're gonna monitor it. And, I just don't know if we wanna give up control of what we're doing. And they don't have the expertise in stormwater and sewer and all
Sorry.
I was gonna ask Lauren, like, what his thoughts are on, having people stay in RVs, or do you wanna leave it as is? It can't stand there for longer than 14 days, or your feelings that it should be, there should be more availability, or,
I think we should stay with what we have. I don't think for me to buy a home, I think the voters of College Place, if you buy a home in our city and your neighbor across the street sets up a camp with tents and buses for people to live in, I think you're gonna have some serious blowback. I don't see communities existing now. I think it's okay to have a tent in the backyard for a few days during a family reunion. To your point, somebody that's in a hardship condition, but to say that we're okay with camping and on the front lawn with a bus full of people, that they can use your bathroom in your house. I think you're gonna have a serious blowback.
I wasn't suggesting something like, quite that extreme. I'm thinking.
So what were you suggesting?
I was imagining something like, someone has a trailer in the backyard, maybe they store it there, and people are allowed to stay there.
I think you said monitoring potty breaks and things like that too. So,
I didn't say monitoring potty breaks. I was suggesting having some sort of sanitation plan.
well, that's great, yeah.
Like,
So. Go ahead.
What I was imagining was something like, you notify the city, there's like maybe say a page-long application, maybe you pay $100, and maybe inspections aren't the way to go. Fair point.
Yeah,
But we could say, hey, this person is gonna stay here, this is the plan, and we say, okay. And if someone complains, they know exactly where they're at.
So I would have that person completely compensate the city for the evaluation of how long they're gonna stay there and monitoring if they actually stay there that long. And whether or not they use the bathrooms at the house or outside of the house. I mean, so we can come up with a fee schedule, I guess, that would monitor that too.
Well, there's also the issue of safety, right? Is the trailer safe? Is it humane? Is it, you know, coming from Seattle, I've seen a lot of trailers that I thought like a wind was gonna knock all their walls over. You know, they have cardboard windows, they have literally duct tape doors. So it's just how to control that. I think, you know, Seattle's probably a perfect example. You can't. It gets out of hand, and before you know it, it's a nightmare, and there is no stopping it once that rock went rolling down that hill. So I think, again, you assume, bless your heart, you assume people are gonna follow rules. Right?
Part of what Michael is seeing, and as an example, when I came home from college and I was home for 4 months, I didn't want to live with my parents. I lived in our camper. It was in our back. No, I mean, I wanted my own space. It was like my own little apartment in my parents' backyard. There were no issues with it. It wasn't, I mean, it wasn't unsanitary or any of those things. It had locks on the little door and it, I mean.
I get it, I do, but there's a lot that won't be that way.
and most likely you were probably breaking some law and you just didn't know it.
You know, it's
Because
kind
this
of-
is not an uncommon, this is not an uncommon zoning regulation to restrict people from living in.
And there's a huge difference between, and Councilmember Joseph, I'll get right, between people who want to live that way and people who have to live that way. So you have to live that way. The cost, that means you don't have money. Period. And when you don't have money, you don't have a nice trailer with a
But we're
lock
talking
and.
about putting the restrictions on the homeowner. So if I have a home and I have room on my property, I mean, I don't know, I am hesitant to add black and white restrictions on what a property owner can do on their property. If they have a family member who wants to be in their.
We're not adding it, it's already existing.
Right, what I'm saying is that if you have a family member who wants to live on your land,
So I'm sorry. So who monitors that? So you have a camper in your backyard. So you're gonna have the city come monitor whether or not that's a direct relation or not? Or whether or not you're renting this out to strangers?
no, but she made the point that there's a difference between people who want to versus have to, and I'm saying,
So who at the city decides whether it's have to or want to?
I don't think that, I think that the homeowner nobody's going to have to live in your backyard. I don't think anybody's probably going to have strangers living in their backyard. What I'm saying is, but that's not my business to say, you can only have people you know live there.
You know,
So if I have a house, I have a backyard. And I have 27 relatives in a tent in the backyard that I'm renting out.
But I'm
Who
not saying
determines
we
if those
should
are my
have,
re-
I'm not saying 27, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any limitations.
We're not gonna agree, okay.
We're
so,
not,
yeah,
but I just,
Well, and then another issue on top of that is if you do, you have your family member, even if it's a family member. And they're in violation of whatever code, then we put it on the property owner to evict that person. Which is, I mean, if we have a slumlord, it's impossible to get that property owner to do anything. And now we're abating it ourselves, and it's a really big mess.
Councilmember Jessup and then Peterson.
No, I'm
and
good,
then-
I'll just say that I think we all hope for best intentions from people at their houses. What would we do? What would our neighbors be doing? I think that's naive. I think we have ordinances because of that. You could have, and to open that up is a dangerous situation. I think the voters of College Place would be really against that.
I have a quick story to tell after Councilmember Jessup goes.
Thanks. I had three things. I'm trying to see if I can keep running it. So there are, I think, one question from the original one for later. So with these newest, dwellings laws and that kind of stuff, does that then kind of trigger us to have to change some of our ordinances so that so that's probably going to be on the pipeline?
Yeah, you'll see that with the ADUs, we will have to modify.
The other question is, a brief question, and then a third thing, if I may. In terms of, how does insurance see temporary dwellings on city property and or someone's home property, such as a tent, RV? Because I know you have to put a trampoline on your insurance because of the injuries and because it blows away. So how does insurance see these things?
I don't know the answer to that. I can find out though.
I'm wondering if that would help inform the have to versus the want. Because it seems like we want to be legal and compliant first. It seems like we want to be, consider liability third, then go to the situational thing. So I'm wondering how insurance covers that. Does that make,
Well, that could vary on carrier. Are you,
Yeah, So it's like medical liability with that. The third thing is, I'm wondering is playing out the scenarios. If you have the ordinance, play that out logically for the next year, what can happen? If you don't have it, what can happen? It seems to me the way in which I'm perceiving this is, if you have something in place, then you got your tail covered. It's easy enough to go, man, I don't know if it's been 14 days, seems like it's been 3 to me. If you don't have something in place, then your hands are tied but you also don't want to be painted in a corner. So it almost seems to me there that the lesser of two evils, if you want to put it that way, for lack of a better term, really. If you have it, we can, if you don't have it, which one can you live with? It seems to me it's easier to live with some sort of something on the books in which you can fall back on in case something happens in terms of liability, so on and so forth. If you don't have something on the books, then you're gonna put yourself in a pickle that you can't do anything about. So it's almost like easier to turn a blind eye, if you want to put it that way, than it is to somehow kind of create something almost illegal. You're gonna try to like evict people, or you're like, well, you can't evict me. I know this house is, say you have 7 people doing it correctly, and you have that one that's not. It's easier to kind of turn away from the 7 to go, oh, no, I know, it's been 3 days, I think. And then that one person, but if nothing's on the books, you can do nothing about the one person that's creating danger, regardless of how, because we don't really know quantifiably unless we go and do the research of what's the scenario of grandma in the backyard and college student living at home, and what's the one that's just in a dilapidated firebox. We can't really quantify that. So it seems to me, this is just my 2 cents. Easier to have your butt covered and kind of turn your head a little bit to whatever situation than it is to not have something and then be hands tied. Those are my 3, if I may.
I'm gonna give a quick example and then we'll move on. So my nephew is homeless in the west side, and he has been for 6 years. And he was living with his girlfriend in one of these little trailers in her grandma's backyard. Tires were flat, it was dilapidated, but no utilities, no motor, nothing. So it was just this shack. We called it a shack. Well, they used to extension cord from grandma's house to the trailer to provide heat in there, and some electricity to stay warm. So they had a portable heater in there to stay warm and some Jimmy rigged light. And it started on fire. So one of the days, the space heater finally did whatever the space heater did out there, the extension cord, fizzled and burnt down what we call the shack completely, burnt the back part of grandma's house and burnt down the side of the neighbor's house. Grandma owned her home, so she didn't even have any homeowners insurance. So those neighbors were out of luck. They had to cover their own cost. My nephew and his girlfriend were lucky they were able to get out. They did have, she had some burns. Grandma was able to get out, but she no longer was able to ever live in her house. It was condemned. She didn't have the money, she didn't have insurance, her house was condemned. And so now she ended up homeless as well. And it's one of those things that the neighbors actually ended up suing the city they're in because they had complained about that shack, that motorhome back there for years, and it was ignored because over in King County, they have a no homeless policy almost. If somebody's gonna, they don't want somebody on the street, they'd rather have them living like that than in the street. But they ended up suing them, and grandma sued them and won because they let her do it. Grandma sued because she lost her house, became homeless, and she sued them for letting her do it. The neighbors sued the city, grandma sued the city, girlfriend got second-degree burns, and my nephew just went on continuing to be homeless the way he is. But that's where things escalate. That's why I'm saying we assume people are gonna follow rules and people have the money to have nice accommodations, but they
But to
don't.
be fair, that could have happened. If they'd have been there for one night, that could have happened,
Right.
that could have happened in her home with a space heater, because space heaters are not illegal.
But it was
I
a
mean,
Jimmy Ray extension cord thing that caused it.
Which is also not illegal.
This is, that's, I
Actually, if
think
you're living there, it is.
It is.
that,
You can't connect more than one extension cord now.
You can't even connect, I think, electricity.
I mean, that's
You
little-
can't
No,
live there.
I mean,
Right.
no, if I-
Take it
if I have
outside.
3 extension
Oh,
cords in my
400
home,
feet, I think it's 400 feet.
You're good.
No,
It's not
that's
safe.
That's illegal.
Is
Is
it?
it?
Yeah,
There you go.
Well, that's what- yeah,
It
that's-
actually is.
For a quick clarification too, and I think this is supportive. We said the word 14 days, but I think you, am I correct? You said it 4 times in a given calendar year, you can apply, which would be,
Yeah.
okay, so what is it?
It's just.
So basically now, if anyone's living there more than 14 days, they're in violation.
So I think that just illustrates the final point of like, which one of these would be supportive of both situational things? Which, you know, ordinance or adjustment of ordinance or no ordinance of all, which one kind of covers the city, but yet being empathetic to situations? Which one covers the tail of the city and the people more? Having something and just kind of being able to pay attention, check up on,
That doesn't scare you?
what's that?
If you tell me, because I've only been there for 14 days or whatever, but they're in a dilapidated state, and so I've been reported, so the city comes and tells these people they have to leave. So those people have been there for a month.
Yeah.
So you're discriminating against me because my tent's not pretty?
No, what we would do.
Yeah, so that's a great point. I don't think that's what this
You
is. I
can't
think it's.
back to one and not the other.
Well, what happens is.
You have to be very careful.
What happens
Understood,
is,
yeah.
if someone comes to me and says, you're doing it wrong, I said, I'm doing it wrong, but so
Yeah,
now the city goes to them. So it's not discriminating. They'll go and
Yeah.
investigate whatever's reported.
I think the
Yeah.
point I feel, and I think it's not necessarily the pretty thing. I think it's more of like a liability thing in terms of like, I think it's one of those ones that if you do come across something that's dangerous, you can do nothing about it. But if you don't have anything in the books, you can't do anything about it. But if you have something in the books, at least you have some sort of recourse for safety. Whereas otherwise you don't, because let's think about it, right? We were saying that people do the right thing. We can apply that same logic to people in charge, not in charge, people, normal people, people in power source over. But you can apply that same logic in the same manner. But just the same as a police officer has a discrepancy to say, ooh, you're doing a great job. I appreciate you being the designated driver. You know, the underage drinkers are in the car. Get your butt home. Thank you for being designated driver. Now, can they technically give them for underage drinking? Sure. Well. Wow,
They
sorry.
would never do that, but. They can't do
I
that.
know they don't, I know they can't.
You get
Let's
pulled
be-
over for speeding.
All right,
you don't
I'm
get
in
a
public
ticket.
forum, all right, I'll rephrase my phraseology, I'll rephrase.
That would be a lawsuit if we went.
Yeah.
No, you're right, that's why you're here, so thank you.
It's just opening Pandora's box.
Yeah, so, I think that's just the final point now, and I'll shut up too, is just a matter of like, which one then gives you the greatest safety that covers the most ground that you can. And-
Well, I think it should be members on record, the next election, what they think should happen. That's where I think it should be.
Leaving it up to the voters is what you're referring to, yeah, yeah.
So you can vote the next election, you want tents in your neighbor's front yard or you don't.
Okay.
So I think we probably could leave it at that, yeah.
Well, and if I may, if council wants to provide direction, there is a kind of generic statute out there for affordable housing incentives. Now, we already have our multifamily tax exemption program. But in 2022, they updated, affordable housing incentives where the city can explore, waiving fees and certain things for building a duplex in a residential zone. So there are avenues, I mean, ultimately, it's housing capacity that we don't have. If we were overcapacity, we would have lower rents and we'd have people. So, I mean, that's an option. We could put.
It's more responsible for the city to do that, to try to accommodate more safe housing being built than for the potential of unsafe housing.
It would be hard for a neighbor to complain about a brand new duplex
Yeah.
when we're on a row of all single homes. Then,
Yeah.
and so,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
sure.
Okay, let's move on, because if we get heated.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, this has been invigorating. I really don't want to go into this right now, but off subject a little bit, but I was reading the whole issue. Washington State set to decriminalize drugs, cities may step in. This is down the road. I know we're not gonna, but,
We already have it on the books.
but we're, okay, go ahead.
Yep, we're ahead of the game. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a gross misdemeanor for knowingly possessing a controlled
The only
substance.
reason I bring it up is that we're talking about
Yep,
your
yep.
wheelhouse and
No,
so,
that's good.
fantastic.
Yeah, but we did a fix before the legislature did their first fix,
Okay.
so we're good.
Thank you.
That being said, I want to congratulate us all for having such a good conversation.
Yeah, this is great.
With experiences and with ideals and making us question our thought processes
Yeah.
in such a respectful way. And in consideration for the citizens, so truly,
Thank you.
pat on our backs for that. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, John, for your help.
John's like, oh, I should have done it.
I made him come.
Threw it out there.
Yeah.
Look, I don't see my name on this agenda. All right, moving on.
Now you can go watch the Kraken game.
Managed Information Technology Services RSQ. Brian, you are up.
Yes, well, as you know, as of June 30th, IMESD, it will be no longer be our IT support service. So in the end of March, we sent out RSQ for public submissions. We got 3 submissions. Kelly Connect, a local IT company, Price Computers, also local out of Milton Creekwater, and a company called Soft Stages Technology out of, I believe, Pittsburgh or somewhere like that.
I think Kelly connects in Spokane.
Kelly.
Well, they claim to be in Spokane, but
Okay.
they have an office up there, or they would open an office up there, or
Well, I believe Kelly Connect has an office in
Yeah.
Walla Walla.
oh, not Kelly Connect, it was the other.
It was Soft Stages Technology.
Yeah.
They claim to have a representative in Spokane.
Okay,
But according to the requirements in the RSQ, they had to have an office within 100 miles, so they were technically disqualified. There's a scoring tally sheet there for you to review, and based on the scoring tally, Price Computers was one selected. as the potential, IT support company. I'm not too sure what else we want to get into. This was Mike's area.
Yeah, that went to,
And I've just got through reviewing the proposed contract. Was that provided to council?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Was it, the draft contract with price of
draft
computers?
contract.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's in there, and to be honest, I just read that this afternoon. And there's a lot of questions about how they're gonna charge their service. They have a monthly contract fee based on the number of computer users and number of servers. And then they have a piecemeal approach to charging for their services. I found it very difficult to try to figure out how much it was gonna cost us on a particular month. Because everything seemed to be an add-on. If this was covered at a certain rate and this is at a certain rate, so being that Mike was the one that first received the contract, we need to dig in deeper into what it really means from a cost perspective for us. Because if you throw everything together, if you took all our services based on how they charge, it'd be rather expensive. So in the RSQ, it was just a request for qualification, so you technically didn't have to offer a pricing structure. And that didn't play into the impact on who was selected, but definitely Kelly Connect was very pricey.
Yeah, and wasn't that because they also did like an à la carte kind of price system, I believe?
They had a set package, but they also did have those additional charges on the back end, like after hours on weekends. Additional out of scope services would be charged at a quite high billable rate. Depending on who did the service, anywhere from $120 up to $220 an hour.
You know, we have viewed this maybe as two packages, and what I mean by that is you have, a company that has the cloud or the infrastructure, that can, make sure we don't have ransomware issues and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm wondering, and only Mike could probably, well, maybe could address this. A second company that would do local support, installing PCs, upgrading and whatnot. And so, and that might cover the à la carte or the optional expenses. So we really don't know what the numbers are yet, obviously. And whether we can break this into two companies or whether it's.
No, it's gonna be one company, plus we're gonna hire an IT analyst, full-time to do the basic.
Okay, and that's.
I think that you might not have been here at the meeting. We talked about this. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and that
that's
was
the
my question.
intention, is to have an IT support person. I know that,
Okay,
Price was against that. They wanted to hire somebody and charge us for it.
Right.
But,
so the hiring of this could avoid those after hours.
well, I hope so, but it's still in the contract.
Right.
This is what the rates, and it
Got
does
it.
not identify
Got it.
the local support person. I noticed in the contract, there's a number of spots where it's, if it's a piece of equipment that they haven't authorized, they won't support it. There was quite a few areas like that, so we need to fine tune that contract,
sure.
because they need to work with our local IT person and take that higher level view.
Yeah, I think, so I was just gonna say, one thing that you might consider. A short term, this is a 3-year proposal, a short term agreement until we get our IT person in, and then the IT person can say. No, that's, a quarterly meeting, we're not gonna pay you $125 for a quarterly meeting, no.
That actually was included in the
Oh.
case.
Well,
Yeah.
I think, I'm sorry, I apologize, it was handed. I think a while back, we were concerned that there'd be nobody engaging. And I think this has been kind of reassuring that we have choices, at this point. I think this is nice. Do we agree on that? I mean, it's,
A little disappointing in the response on the RSQ, really. There is some other IT
Oh.
companies in the valley, but
Mhm.
none of them submitted qualifications. And one of our biggest fears with Price is that we would be their largest customer. significantly larger than most. They have a lot of customers, but smaller based, and they build their own computers. So Ree and I were talking about potentially something in there that says that they'll deal with the Dell,
Right,
because they don't deal with Dell, although apparently they are trying to be certified Dell. So they might be moving down that road.
Boy,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, so that makes me very nervous. Is it, so when is the got that deadline here? June 30th?
Yes,
So
yes,
we're
done.
ready. Yeah, we were sweating it because nothing was a slam dunk. We literally got down to the lesser of evils.
What, yeah, and it sounds to me as if you guys even need more time before it's really kind of discussed.
No, I think
So to
we
get
can
dealt.
probably be ready by, next 1 or 2 council meetings.
So there's nothing we can table for a little bit to get some more research and details of like what services are we getting for the money?
next year.
I put Mike on notice that, you know,
No,
you
we'll
guys will ask
figure it out.
questions
I guess we could, when's the next council meeting? Next
next
week?
week.
Next week.
And then there's one more in the month of May, so,
You
I'm
know,
not
it's
sure what
special.
Mike's intention was to make sure the next meeting it came for approval. But,
We can always have a special meeting.
Yeah, that's what,
based on-
I guess that's what I'm nervous about, because if you don't find the right one, it's better, oftentimes it's better just to hold it off until you find the right one, because
we can't,
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking, yeah,
can't do that.
can't really have time.
No, we don't have time. We gotta get something in.
Can you then, didn't you just say this, kind of adjust the long-term commitment to more of a short
Yeah,
term?
that's
kind
what
of
I was
get some
thinking,
leeway?
stopgap,
Right.
other insurance.
Yeah,
Yeah, I had asked Mike if he could, propose, you know, a 12-month contract as opposed to a 36-month. See what we can go with
See
that.
if they'll go for that.
I wonder if that's gonna increase the contract amount.
Right.
Because
Well, we
there's
can't really
gonna
do
be a
that.
lot of onboarding expenses by whoever we select
Got
in
you.
terms of getting themselves set up and familiar. with-
Yeah, they're gonna be bringing in server software or hardware to track, activity and.
What a nightmare.
And I just saw the contract,
Today.
today. So,
Well, I sent it to him and said, how much is this gonna cost us? And he said, I don't know.
well, I don't know, I have to do some figuring out and calculating of what the kind of the range is of what we could potentially pay.
Right,
In my opinion, if we have a local IT person in here, I'm a believer they can do probably 80 to 90% of what we need. And the 10% is that higher level stuff, you know, cyber attacks and spam and.
I mean. We don't know. You maybe end up being able to hire 2 or 3 people, you know, we don't know. I mean, for crying out loud, you know. When you see the final numbers.
Well, when we started looking at it, we did look at having our own IT department and it was very cost prohibitive. To get an IT manager is, you know, 6-figure salary plus benefits. And we figured we'd go this route because do we
Sure.
really need an IT department?
We'll see.
as long as this is 6 figures.
yeah.
Yeah,
7 figures.
well, thank you both for looking at that, truly, and looking at it in a deeper way, because, there's so many unknowns and it's easy to say, okay, well, that sounds good, and then we don't know what we're really getting into.
Right, that's how I feel about it currently, but you know, if I put some. Numbers to paper and think, well, this is how much it's gonna cost us and this is what we get.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions regarding the IT? All right, that's all of our workshop topics. Is there anything for good of the order?
You know, since I'm on the roll tonight,
Who are you meeting up next?
I still would like a well map.
Oh.
What?
I requested a map.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
That
so-
wasn't for me though.
Oh, water well.
I know. Play on words, I apologize. but
Yeah, I remember that.
I want to follow through on that because I think that's so important to the council members. And right now, I can't tell you what's well 7 or 4 or 1 or 10, you know.
Well, we're moving them around.
Thank you.
I can't keep going.
So if you could do that, or I can take time off from work to sit down with you on Google Maps and map.
No, it's okay. I guess since I'm in charge and Mike's gone, then I guess that falls in my.
No, I want something cheap.
Something that's
And I want something cheap and dirty, I mean, seriously, I just want a map of the world and where the map, our wells are at on it.
We have something available for you. I just don't.
I'm not gonna give up on this, so.
I just wrote down well map.
I put mine for council.
No, thank you. I think it's important.
I have one quick thing, if I may, and it's not like we have a high attendance, but just for the public record, I just want to make sure that I had a poor analogy and corrected by our lawyer, so thank you, I'm not. We're doing anything illegal, we'll make sure that was very clear, poor analogy.
I'll use the nursing term. We triage, nuisances in the city
Yeah,
based
triage.
on. A lot of it is based on complaint driven because so I kind of jokingly, sometimes I'm not here at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I'm
And
not-
so
yeah.
my employees will go, oh, you're late again today, John. I go, no, as soon as I drive into the city, I am on duty.
That's fine.
And I see things all the time when I'm driving around, but I have to hold my tongue when I get to the office because we're always dealing with putting out a fire.
Well, I'm not trying to re-stir it, I
And
know the conversation, I just want to make sure that I was clear that we're not doing anything illegal, and I'm not suggesting it, that's all I'm saying. That's all, I didn't want to re-stir the conversation, just to like cover my own back.
So we don't talk about it.
We knew each other.
Okay, thank you.
No. We're good.
All right then. Any other?
One more thing, we had a wellness lunch today with all the staff and it was great. So that's just feedback for council.
Oh, cool.
I'm being treated well.
What was that?
Oh, well, we were supposed to give out quarterly awards
For health?
Now we
for
have,
doing going above and beyond.
Oh,
Right, and it's called a shout out, or I can't remember what, I will never get one, but because no one likes their
Home
home
run?
here. Home run hero.
so we have a large bat and there's four quarters in the year, so we give out little home runs to an individual per quarter, and then those individuals sign the bat. And so when you come into City Hall, into the admin side, there's 4 bats hanging on the wall there.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
But those have the individuals, their names signed on them. So it's kind of we can nominate, anybody can nominate an employee for a home run. And so,
So who's the recent one?
Randy, Reese,
Oh,
but he wasn't there. Well, I had to.
no, so that's what happened, and usually they read everything
Thank you.
off and they do a little presentation, but the two people that had.
They're busy working.
They were busy. Actually, Randy had to run home because he accidentally took home a city key.
Oh.
Guilty about it, so he went home on his lunch hour to get the key. It was for like a toilet paper dispenser in one of the bathrooms.
To revoke it.
Yeah, we're taking away.
I mean, that's how dedicated he is. He was like, I need to be able to refill this
Oh.
toilet paper dispenser, and he went home to get the key.
That's really good.
I will mention that there is a wellness team that puts these luncheons
Yeah.
together.
That's really neat.
It's really
Just once a-
encouraging, because
Once a
when
quarter.
sometimes you feel like you're getting beaten down,
Yeah.
To
then
come together and have
and
a nice meal.
it's a good work environment, so
The wellness team
Thank
does a
you.
great job.
Yeah.
good leadership.
Sean in particular, she kind of spearheads
He's
that.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing that.
Absolutely.
so I gotta say, I've had people, this is off subject completely, I'm sorry, there I go again, but, I've had so many people come up to me and look at the, Lions Park plan they've seen online or something like that. And there was such excitement about that, they're talking about when and what, and, I'm just saying, a few days go by and there's somebody coming up and saying that they're just, I just wanna let you know, that people are just,
Yeah.
so engaged and looking at online plans and whatnot, and I know it's a long journey, we're not there, it's gonna take more, but.
We're almost there. We're in the permitting stages right now with the state agency.
Ah.
And because we combined that project with a water quality project, mainly so to improve the pond. And that's taking that, there's a lot of environmental permits involved, and so we're getting really close to having that process complete, and then we can go out to bid and.
Yeah, it's just been,
The
Cool.
plans are like basically 99% complete.
Yeah,
Well, now that you brought that up, and it's probably Parks Department, but there's a bench facing large that's right behind the bushes, that I don't see why anybody would sit on a bench that looks right into bushes. It's on this little triangle. Do you know which bench I'm talking about? It's
the
like,
bushes have grown since the bench.
it's like there's because it's a parking lot, and there's a bench that stares right into the bushes. Like, I think we could probably put that bench in a better place, right in front of the bushes.
Oh, man.
Someone can sit there.
Um,
On that note.
On that note.
Put a trailer there.
All right, I'm gonna conclude the workshop at 6:41 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.